At the very end of May, I did my best and worst of April 2017 and my best of May 2017. I filmed those countdowns, I uploaded them probably a week into June. Can't remember when I uploaded them. But because of my schedule, I haven't filmed the worst of May 2017 yet, and so let's just get to it. Now, if you remember my best of May countdown, I said that I saw about 8 movies, I believe. Somewhere around that range. So obviously I haven't seen all the movies of May 2017. And there are a few that probably would make this list. Movies such as Black Site Delta, Lowriders, Absolutely Anything, which was a movie I think came out last year or maybe even the year before in the UK, but we finally got it here in America. And Black Butterfly didn't look all that good either. I haven't seen any of these movies yet. Probably will someday, maybe even next year, maybe the end of this year. Who knows? The important thing is I haven't seen these movies, so they can't be put onto this list, but they probably would make the list if I had seen them. So let's get to the 3 worst movies of May 2017 that I saw out of the 8 movies that I ended up seeing in theaters. And to be honest, 2 of these 3 probably will get 2 stars or close to 2 stars when I actually review them. So ultimately these aren't awful movies, but they are bad enough to be, in the worst of a month. Or at least out of the initial movies that I saw in that month. My number 3 is Diary of a Wimpy Kid, The Long Haul. Now, I have to be honest with you, never saw the other Diary of a Wimpy Kid movies. I think there's 3 other ones, I believe, either 3 or 2. I'm not even sure because I never watched them. So I don't know how the other 3 were like and if this is very different from the others. I know it's a whole new cast. I do know that, which makes sense because, well, they took so long to make this movie that the kids got older and they couldn't quite use the kids now. I mean, do you want to see a young adult or maybe even a teenager play some of these kids when they're supposed to be much, much younger? I don't think so. So I can't compare these to the other movies, but from what I saw, and I was the only person in the theater for this movie, it wasn't as terrible as I thought it would be. Don't get me wrong, it is pretty bad, but it had this sort of Nickelodeon, over-the-top, goofy movie vibe to it. Every single actor in this movie overacts, they feel cartoony, they feel like a live-action cartoon. They feel like the type of movies that Nickelodeon would make in the 90s or early 2000s. If you're into that, you honestly might like this movie. I have to be honest, I felt there was some charm to it, and I was actually enjoying it, even if most of the time I was enjoying it because it's a movie so bad that it's good. I don't know, it had that sort of vibe where I was having a blast watching how bad it is at times, while at the same time kind of infected with its charm, so I kind of dug it. It is your typical road trip movie. It has all the cliches. It has everything you'd expect for a road trip movie, just a family-friendly road trip movie. And as a road trip movie, this is far better than that one comedy, Vacation, was it 2015 it came out? The newest Vacation with Ed Helms in it, right? I forgot, because there's only one scene in the entire film of Vacation 2015 that I actually liked, which is the one with Charlie Day. That scene was the only scene that I laughed at. Yeah, Diary of a Wimpy Kid, The Long Haul, way better than Vacation 2015. And I have to say, there is some moments in Long Haul that is so ridiculous, so outlandish, it almost feels like, hey, we don't give a hell, we don't care, let's just throw this in there, and it was actually pretty hilarious, even if it may not have been meant to be hilarious. I have a feeling that I'm going to have to talk more in depth with this movie to clarify some of these points, and this really isn't the movie review for it, this is the countdown, so I can't talk too much about it. just know that I had some fun with this movie, even though I would classify it as a movie so bad that it's good for most of it. There are some things that I genuinely dislike about the movie, but that's far and few between. I still have no problem calling it a bad movie, but I had fun watching it, for the most part. Now, the other two movies in my countdown, I had absolutely no fun watching these movies, even though they would still probably get somewhere in the 2-star range for me. My number 2 is Baywatch, and let me just tell you, this was a very disappointing movie for me. This is probably one of the most disappointing movies I've seen all year, mainly because I had some expectations going into it. I actually did think, oh, this is going to be more of a spoof movie. This is going to be like a parody movie. It's going to be satire of the Baywatch series. They're going to sort of make fun of it. They're going to know what kind of movie this is, and they're going to run with that. And it's not. The trailers made it seem like, oh, this is going to be like a 22 Jump Street or a 21 Jump Street, where it's making fun of itself, it's completely aware of itself, and it's going to make fun of the movie tropes and actually do something hilarious with it. But it's not really satire. It doesn't poke fun of itself. Rarely does it poke fun of itself. And the times it does, it's the same jokes repeated over and over again. So no, this is not satire. This is not 22 Jump Street. This movie is way too serious for its own good. And in that sense, it becomes your typical buddy cop type movie, just with lifeguards instead of cops. Now, there's definitely enough things in this movie for me to legitimately say, yeah, it's not the worst film I've seen all year, maybe the most disappointing film, but there's some things in it that I did like. I thought all the actors and actresses in this movie, every single one of them, tried their best and tried to do something with their characters. I think the dialogue, the jokes, it all fell flat, but the actors tried their best to try to heighten their characters in some way. In fact, it felt like Zac Efron's character was sort of a repeat for his characters for Neighbors, where he's sort of this guy that you think would be cool, you think would be hip. He's sort of selfish in this one. But then they have a sort of sad moment with him where he doesn't know what to do and he's pretty much a homeless person living under the docks. There's something about that that reminded me of his character in Neighbors. But everything else about this movie felt too by the numbers and too serious for its own good. Yes, there are times where it pokes fun of itself, but like I said, it's the same two jokes done over and over again, and the most stereotypical jokes you would expect of making fun of Baywatch, which is the people running in slow motion. That's used a few times, and in the trailer they make fun of that a little bit, poke fun of itself, make itself self-aware by saying, oh, you see what I see because she's running in slow motion. And there's one bit at the very end where someone's going even more super slow-mo and they notice that. But the main joke that it pokes fun of itself as is the fact that they're lifeguards and they shouldn't be doing police duty. And the joke is always delivered the same way as either a cop saying, hey, you shouldn't do that, or a character in the Baywatch team saying, don't you think that this is a job for the cops and not us? It's the same joke repeated over and over and over again with very little variety. And so I can't say this is a movie that's self-aware, that's satirical, and meant to be parody, because it feels too serious, too by the numbers, and they don't do something with that by the numbers material to make fun of that by the numbers material. It's just played off too seriously, despite the fact that the intro of the movie is Dwayne Johnson carrying a person out of the sea, the big Baywatch logo bursting out of the sea behind him, while dolphins jump out of the sea and collide with each other. I'm like, oh, this is going to be satirical, this is going to be self-aware, this is going to be over-the-top ridiculous. That's the most over-the-top thing in this entire movie. The intro. Also, I found the villain very weak, and I just didn't find them intimidating, and then the ultimate plan was just pretty lame. So yeah, Baywatch, big disappointment for me, but it's probably gonna still range in the 2-star range when I actually review it. Because I can see people liking it, but honestly, Chips was better. And Chips got 2 stars for me. Chips was better. But the worst film of May 2017 for me so far this year is the romance film, Everything, Everything. Now, I really don't want to go too much into detail with this because I think I have a lot that I can talk about with this film for my movie review. I will say this, there is a few things that I did legitimately like about the film. I like the main 2 actors. I think they did well with each other. I thought they acted well with each other. And I thought that they had chemistry, and I sort of bought their acting, but I didn't buy their characters' chemistry in the same vein as The Space Between Us, where I understood the chemistry between the 2 main characters in The Space Between Us. I thought the actors and the actor and actress had a good chemistry, but the characters that they played did not have good chemistry. If that makes any sense to you. For some reason, it makes perfect sense for me. Or at least that's how I felt with The Space Between Us and Everything, Everything. The sad thing about Everything, Everything is it tries to be your typical indie romantic type film. And I know the indie genre really isn't something I could say is a specific genre because most indie films are very different, but you can't deny that there are some indie type films that have some of the same style, the sort of quirkiness and romantic comedy sort of thing, and try to be a little bit artsy and inventive and imaginative. There's definitely this indie style to this movie, or at least it tries to, but in this movie, it just looks dumb. I can see the potential of this movie if it's told differently, if it's directed differently, and is much more of an indie film than it's trying to play off as, where we actually get some character development and some actual time to bond with these characters, then it probably could be good. Instead, it feels like your generic cliched romance film with a bit of a twist and some indie style spliced into it, but the indie style sort of just not meshing well, or feeling forced, or unimaginative. Now the quirkiness and the indie style that I'm talking about is there's times when our main character, who's the girl that's stuck in this house, she can't go outside because she's got a disease, and or a weakened immune system or something like that. They say it in the film. But in order to escape the blandness of being indoors all the time, she escapes in her imagination, and when she actually talks to our main guy that she falls in love with, well, they have text conversations. Well, instead of it being a scene where they're just texting, they try to do something quirky. They try to do something imaginative where she imagines herself in a different place in one of her models that she makes. She makes model structures, like she has one of a diner and one of a library or something like that. And so she imagines them both in that place, and we see them talking to each other rather than them texting back and forth. Even though the conversation they're talking about is done through text in the real world, she's imagining them actually speaking and actually sitting in a diner. And that sounds like it could be cool, except it's executed in a very cheap, terrible green screen way, especially the space scene at the very end. And it's done in a bland, by-the-numbers kind of style, even though it's supposed to be imaginative and creative. I saw the twist coming, and there's just so much of this movie where it feels like it had some sort of potential. I have to admit that. But it just doesn't know what to do with it, and it looks like a Lifetime movie. So yeah, those are the 3 movies that I found the worst of May 2017, but I only saw 8 movies, and so 5 of them I liked, 3 of them I disliked. Or at least 3 of them could easily be categorized as bad films. in my opinion. So out of the movies you saw in May 2017, what are the worst films you saw, if you saw any movies that you would consider bad? And if you like this video and you want to see more, please subscribe and check out my countdowns or movie reviews of 2015, 2016, or 2017. As always, this is Bruce Gifford, and this was Just My Opinion.